Good evening. Welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show with your host, Miss V. That'd be me. Tonight we have a video tribute to the late Sam Parker, told by his friend Johnnie Jackson. So why don't you sit down, grab a drink, and I hope you enjoy the story of Sam.
My name is Johnnie Jackson, and I'm here to tell you the story of Sam Parker. I met Sam Parker back somewhere around 1980. I was a 14-year-old kid who had watched a movie called Sasquatch, and I was interested in Bigfoot. Young kid, wanted to believe in everything. And I had a elementary school principal that could tell how much excitement that I had about it. So he actually done some looking around and found this guy named Sam Parker, who was working for the maintenance department over in Lee County, North Carolina. So we looked his number up, and he put me on the phone with him, and I told him what I wanted, that I was a young kid and interested in Bigfoot. And Sam Parker took the time, and he set up a meeting with me and this principal and a couple of other of my friends. And on a rainy Saturday, we drove to Sanford, North Carolina, and I got to meet Sam Parker for the first time as a 14-year-old kid. And Sam took us down these, if you can imagine, a one-lane bridge and dirt roads with no pavement. And he took us down those dirt roads, and he talked about Bigfoot. And to a 14-year-old kid, man, I was in heaven. So I got introduced to his mom and his dad, and I got to interview him and ask him questions about Bigfoot. And, his mom had actually discovered the first tracks over there, and got to talk with his dad, and he told me his story. And so he took us to the woods where they had heard the roars, and we got to hear all of that. So to a 14-year-old kid, man, I'm telling you. So I decided I wanted to do a science project. And so I went to my biology teacher, and I asked him if I could do a science project on Bigfoot. And I think he thought I was crazy. But he agreed. And so we called Sam Parker back, and we said, Sam Parker, can we borrow those casts that you've got of the Bigfoot, because we want to do a science project. So Sam, being the man he was, he was such a good guy. He said, sure, come on over here. So this man loaned me the only two casts he had, and we were able to put together a science project that actually finished first in regional. And so he helped me along with that. So that was my first introduction to Sam Parker. And as a 14-year-old kid, you're seeing this guy who's chasing Bigfoot, and he almost becomes your hero then. And so we're going to fast forward to probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Me and Sam went 30 years and didn't even connect at all. But there's these people that you meet sometimes in life that it doesn't matter where you're with them or not. You're still friends, and you're friends. And so I had lost Sam's number, and I tried to find him on Facebook, and I Googled his name, and I couldn't find him. And I had a friend around Sanford. This went on for like a month or two, and I could not find Sam Parker. I didn't even know where Sam Parker was alive or not. But I wanted to talk to him again. So my friend calls me back. She says, I think I found who you're looking. And she gave me a telephone number. And I called that telephone number, and Sam Parker answered. And I told Sam Parker who I was. And Sam just could not believe that we were connecting again. And so we scheduled a time, and I drove up to that same place. And since that time, they had paved the roads and built a new bridge and all kinds of stuff. But I went down to Sam's little cabin. Sam had the coolest little cabin. He hand built this thing room by room, and inside there were paintings that he had painted personally, and kind of like you see right here. This is one of Sam's paintings, and so he had painted snow scenes and cabins and all kinds of stuff. So I went down to Sam's house, and we got to hang out in his little barn, and we talked about Bigfoot again. And I didn't have a four-wheeler, so I drove his wife's four-wheeler, and we took the entire afternoon, and we reminisced through the woods and down the river, and he took me to all the places that all this stuff had happened before, all these years ago. And it was like he was reliving that when he was telling me about it. That this was what happened here, and this is where the guy lived that had 9 dogs killed, and this is my mom and dad's old house, and this is where she saw him walking along the hedgerow in the early morning hours when she was leaving to go to work. And here's the field that my dad was plowing down when he saw it standing in the woods, rocking back and forth. And so we kind of got to relive that. So I went from being a 14-year-old kid who he was my hero kind of right then, because I was on this Bigfoot thing. So, when life happens and you have kids and you go for years and years, you don't meet this guy, and all of a sudden that connection, the same connection was there. It was there all along. I mean, we were just automatically friends because of the way Sam was and what he did when I was a 14-year-old kid. Sam had a love for this thing. He never got to lay his eyes on a Bigfoot, but he interviewed so many people, and he loved to be in the woods. He was a hunter for years and years, and I remember him even telling me when that thing run him out of the woods a couple of times when he was trying to bow hunt. But he never got to lay eyes on it. But he believed in it so much. And he had all the little maps drawn and where the tracks were at. And he had pictures of the places. And so, it was just so good to be able to reminisce that after all those years. And I'm getting older now, and Sam's getting older. And, it's almost like you were reliving it again. But there was a connection there that you just can't describe it. So,
So, Johnny, Sam had a unique way of casting prints. Would you like to talk about what he cast the print in?
Well, Sam was a common sense kind of guy. So, the cast that he had, they took some fishing weights when he did his first cast, and they took a torch and they melted them into the tracks. And so the first 2 casts that they did were of lead, and so they were very heavy. And they're still around. They're not broken. But that was the first thing he used to do his cast with. He talked about how they stayed in the woods at night. They built a platform that was like 40 feet up in a tree, and they tried to see this thing. He really wanted to see this thing so bad, but he never got to see it during the time he was on this earth. So, anyway, during the last 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer than that, we had connected again, so I would go up to that area, and I would tell him I was coming, and if there was any way possible, he would come out, and he would hang out with us, and we'd get to sit in the chairs, and he had bought him. Since when we connected, there was a fire that ignited in Sam to do it again, because he had kind of let all that go as the years and forgot about the Bigfoot. And so when we connected again, he went out and bought him an infrared camera, and he bought him a monitor, and he got him a recorder, and he really got back into this thing. And if they heard a roar or something, he would call me on the phone and tell me that they had heard one. So that fire that was in Sam when I was so young and went up there, that fire was reignited when we met, and we started talking and reminiscing. And it was a relationship it's hard to explain. But it was something it was unique.
So the events that happened around Sam's house, that was a pretty big story, right?
Yes, it was a big story, and it caught the eyes of some newspapers and a lot of your local residents. They came out with it. Sam said it kind of got dangerous for a little while because everybody had guns, and they were looking at this thing. And there was even a point in time where some government agents came down and showed up and wanted to ask some questions during this time. But it was a big thing for a little while, about a year, and then it started quietening down. But, you know, and it's kind of been quiet now up until just a few years ago. Actually, when me and Sam met again, then it's like this thing kicked over again because Sam started talking about it. And Sam started hunting this thing and wanting to see it again. And so from that came the Cumnock Bigfoot Conference that we do now. You know, we got messed up a couple of years with COVID, but other than that, we've done it every year. And it was Sam that helped spark that because his love, it's like his first love came back. And so
when Sam had all these maps that he would show people at this conference, those maps are not like we would go to a computer and print off. Could you describe how he drew out those maps and how they were preserved? And
Sam was a plain guy. Sam drew these maps and he colored the green with a crayon just like a kid would. And he had different colors on it, and he would draw little tracks showing. I actually have copies of every single Sam's work. He gave me everything he had, and the way he did things, and when he wrote the sightings and what the dates were on the sightings and who saw the sightings, and he had put them in order on just a piece of notebook, you know. And so all that stuff was done back in 77, 78 when he did that. So we still have all the records of all that stuff. So, Sam, during this time that we had reconnected, we were talking a lot. I remember and this really stands out because Sam was a community servant. And I remember when the hurricane came and all of these people up there were cut off from being able to get their medicines or being able to get food. And Sam and his brothers, they took a boat, and they would actually take this boat and cross the river, go up the river and go into town, and they would pick people groceries up and water and go pick their medicines up that they needed because they were cut off for quite a while till they could get the bridge and all put back together. So, Sam was a servant. I mean, he was a servant. He was a servant to the Cumnock community, to the river group for looking after the river and keeping the bad people run out. Man, he was just a different kind of guy.
So when you talk about the events that happened around Sam's house, was it his wife that first saw the creature? If so, can you describe that?
No, it was Sam's mom found the first tracks that were crossing her garden. She went down to check her garden, and when she got down there, there was these large, huge tracks walking across the garden, not down the roads, but across the roads. And it scared her. She'd never seen nothing like that. So she jumped in her vehicle and she goes home and she gets her husband and she says, there's something been across my garden. There's these big tracks. So they called Sam, and Sam and his brothers left work and came right then. And so that's what got it all started. His mom did have a sighting, but it was later. She was leaving to go to work early one morning. And it was just before daybreak, and as she was going around the house, it was walking behind the hedgerow, and it ducked down. The hedges are tall, but she could see like from the shoulders, just below the shoulders up, and it was walking behind the hedgerow when her lights caught it, and it ducked to try to hide from the lights. So she went right back around the house and bailed out and ran in the house and woke her husband up and said, "That thing is in the yard. You're going to have to get up." So, and that's during the time that they found all the pecan limbs had been broken, like it was stripping the pecans and stuff off. So, that was some of the first sightings. I interviewed a guy when I was that age that, I think his name was, his first name was Roy, but they had actually saw the creature walking. They were on one side of the river on top of a hill riding horses, and this thing was crossing the field underneath them. It didn't see them on top of the hill, and they watched it walk from one side to the other.
But you have a photo of several men hanging off the limb of a tree. Can you explain the story behind that photo?
The limbs had been broken down, and so what they did was to try to figure out how much this thing weighed. Sam and his brothers throwed a heavy log chain over one of the limbs that were the same size, and they all three of them hung on the chain to see if they could break the limbs, and they couldn't break them down. But they were trying to figure out how heavy this thing had to be to break those limbs down and strip the leaves and the pecans off of it. And they also discovered the tracks that were under the pecan trees. So that was just one of the incidents. I have some pictures of it's an older house now. Nobody lives in it. But during that time, there was a gentleman that stayed right up from him. And he had about 9 dogs killed during that time. That they'd be killed at night. So there's a lot more story to that. What I'd like to say, though, I like to talk about Sam a little bit. And, probably a year and a half before Sam actually died, I went with him to the doctor. And he thought he was having bursitis in his shoulder, in his rear shoulder. And I went with him to the doctor. And they took some tests, and they actually gave him a shot that day because they were trying to figure out if it was bursitis or something. So they gave him something for it. It didn't help. And so a short time later, they scheduled him a scan, and they found out that he had cancer and that the cancer was in his lungs. So, he tried treatments, and we stayed connected during this time, but sometimes we would go out, and Sam wouldn't feel like going out. He wouldn't go because he didn't feel like it. So we actually had planned several times to try to get together with him because Sam's dream was to get a recorder and go back and re-interview all these people that were still living, and he wanted to just talk to them face to face. That's what Sam wanted to do. So he got him a recorder, but when he got sick, he never felt like doing it. So for a few weeks before Sam died, I was there, not every week or every day, but every few weeks I was there with him. And it got to the point where the last conference that we did, Sam had lost a lot of weight and he wasn't feeling well. But Sam really wanted to do this conference. And Sam told me, he says, I don't know that I can hold out to do this talk. So I said, well, Sam, let's me and you do the talk together, and you talk as long as you want to, and when you get done, you just sit down and I'll take it from there. And so the last talk that he did, we did it together. And it was over at Cumnock Park. And so shortly after that, he went downhill fast. We took pictures that day of all of us, and it was a good day, but Sam really didn't feel good. So I remember going to Sam's, house the last few weeks that he lived, and I would go in and sit with him, and some days he was really tired, and I remember he would hold my hand while I was there. He lost a lot of weight. He was really on skin and bones, and he was on hospice for a couple weeks before he died. And I remember walking up in there one time, and Sam would always, Sam would tell me he loved me, when I would leave. But yeah, excuse me. But the last time I was there, he woke up and I asked him. I said, "Sam, do you know Jesus?" And Sam raised his head the best he could. And he looked at the end of the bed. And he said, he was here this morning. He actually touched my foot. So anyway, you have to excuse me. So anyway, that was the last time I saw Sam alive. And the next couple of days, they called family in, and they called me when he passed. And of course, we did the funeral thing with Sam, and Sam was just a good guy.
If you wanted the world to know one thing about Sam, what would it be, Johnny?
Sam was a man's man. Sam was a man's man, and he loved his community. He loved his country. He was a hard worker. He enjoyed doing his hobbies. One of the things that Sam done was he flew airplanes all during these years that we didn't connect. He got into flying airplanes, and, Sam was just a man's man.
Well, thank you for sharing Sam's story.
Thank you for listening.